A wealthy man spots a black driver dancing with his paralyzed daughter. What happened next shocked everyone. "Stop immediately!" John's voice boomed through the mansion, strong as thunder. He stood at the entrance of the living room, fists clenched, observing a scene that instantly filled him with rage. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was in her wheelchair in the center of the room, smiling for the first time in months. Beside her, Michael, the driver he had hired just 3 weeks prior, was dancing softly to Brazilian music playing on his phone. The 32-year-old man gently held the girl's hand, slowly spinning around her chair, while she clapped with a joy John hadn't seen since the accident. "What do you think you're doing with my daughter?" John advanced toward Michael, who immediately stopped dancing and released Lily's hand. The girl's smile instantly vanished, replaced by an expression of confusion and fear. Michael remained calm, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Mr. John, can I explain?" "Explain," John interrupted, his voice filled with indignation. "You were hired to drive, not to do whatever this is." He gestured furiously at the phone, which was still playing music. "Turn that thing off now!" Lily began to cry softly, and Michael quickly grabbed the phone to pause the music. The silence that followed was suffocating. John looked at his daughter, then at Michael, and felt a tightness in his chest he couldn't describe. "Dad, please," Lily whispered, her voice small and choked. "Michael was just teaching me to dance like the other kids." "You can't dance!" John exploded, the words escaping before he could control himself. "You're in a wheelchair, Lily. The sooner you accept that, the better." Michael's face twitched slightly, but he remained silent. There was something in his eyes, not anger nor fear, but a deep understanding that John couldn't decipher. It was as if the driver knew exactly the kind of pain that made him react that way. "Mr. and John," Michael said calmly, his voice carrying a soft accent John had never noticed before. "Can I speak with you in private?" "There's nothing to discuss," John responded dryly. "Get your things. You're fired." Michael nodded slowly, but before turning to leave, he looked at Lily one last time. "Remember what we talked about butterflies, little one. Some fly differently, but they still fly." As Michael walked toward the door, John noticed something that unsettled him. The man didn't seem surprised or desperate, as he would expect from someone who had just lost their job. There was a serenity in his movements, as if he knew something John didn't. Lily continued crying, and John knelt beside her chair, trying to comfort her, but his words sounded empty even to himself. "Why did you send him away?" Lily asked between sobs. "He made me feel normal again." John didn't know how to respond. For 6 months, since the accident that left Lily paralyzed from the waist down, he had hired the best physical therapists, psychologists, and specialists money could buy. None of them had managed to coax a true smile from his daughter until Michael appeared. As he watched Lily wipe away her tears with the back of her hand, John wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. There was something about that driver that didn't fit, something that triggered a different kind of alarm in his analytical mind. If this story of prejudice and unexpected discoveries is touching your heart, don't forget to keep reading, because what John was about to discover about Michael would change not only his perspective on the driver, but on himself, in a way he never thought possible. 3 days passed since the dismissal, and John's mansion seemed to have returned to its silent, cold routine. John threw himself into work, convincing himself that he had made the right decision. After all, he couldn't allow strangers to take advantage of his daughter's vulnerability. But Lily wasn't cooperating. With his plan for normalcy, the girl refused to leave her room, pushed away meals, and cried whenever she heard the sound of cars in the driveway, hoping it was Michael returning. The physical therapist John hired reported total resistance. "She simply refuses to participate in any activity." "Dad, why doesn't Michael come back?" Lily asked for the 10th time that morning, her tears leaving stains on her pillowcase. "We've talked about this, dear. He wasn't right for the job here," John replied, adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. The meeting with international investors couldn't be postponed, even with the situation at home. But he understood me, Lily murmured, turning her face to the wall. Meanwhile, across town, Michael sat at his small kitchen table, calmly typing on a laptop that definitely didn't match the modest apartment where he lived. The screen displayed a series of emails in English, French, and Portuguese, correspondence that a simple driver should never be able to maintain. His phone rang. "Dr. Evans?" The voice on the other end spoke in French. "The university would like to confirm your availability for the neuroplasticity lecture next week." "I need to postpone for a few days," Michael replied in the same language, his eyes never leaving the photo he had discreetly taken of Lily during one of their dance sessions. "I have a special case that requires attention." John had never bothered to thoroughly investigate Michael's background. If he would have discovered that the man he had hired as his driver had a PhD in neuroscience from a prestigious European university, specialized in music and movement therapy for children with neurological trauma, and had abandoned a promising academic career after a personal tragedy. But there was something more, something that even the most thorough investigation wouldn't reveal. Michael had known John's family for much longer than John imagined. As John prepared for another day, trying to ignore his daughter's sobs, his personal assistant Ben entered the office with a worried expression. "Mr. John, I need to report something strange," Ben said, consulting his tablet. "The driver you fired, Michael?" "Yes." He didn't try to contest the dismissal, didn't ask for references, didn't seem desperate at all. John frowned. Indeed, Michael's calm reaction had bothered him from the start. So what? Maybe he already had another job lined up. "I did some checks, sir. I found out he has an advanced academic background. He speaks 4 languages and—" Ben hesitated. "There are records of him working with special needs children in European hospitals." John's stomach tightened slightly. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because you didn't ask for a full background check, sir. You said you just needed someone to drive." John vaguely remembered the job interview. Michael had been recommended by the employment agency as highly qualified and experienced with families. He had assumed that referred only to driving experience. That afternoon, John returned home early and found Lily exactly as he had left her, motionless in bed, staring out the window. But this time, she was whispering something. "Who are you talking to, dear?" he asked, approaching her. "The butterflies," Lily replied without turning. "Michael taught me that some fly differently, but they still fly, like me." John felt a lump in his throat. Those were the last words Michael had said to Lily before. Leaving. Later, after Lily fell asleep, John found himself walking to the garage, where he used to find Michael cleaning the car and humming softly. The space was now empty and silent, but something caught his attention. On the car seat, Michael had left a small leather folder. John opened it, expecting to find personal documents. Instead, he found medical articles about childhood paralysis, music therapy techniques, and a series of handwritten notes about Lily's condition. The notes were detailed, professional, and revealed a knowledge of Lily's condition that went far beyond what any driver should possess. There were diagrams of exercises, adapted musical progressions, and a treatment plan that stretched for months. At the bottom of the folder, John found a faded photograph. A young man in a white coat beside a blonde woman in a hospital bed. Both were smiling at the camera. The woman had the same blue eyes as Lily. It was his wife, Sarah, the woman who had died in the accident, that left Lily paralyzed. The photo was dated 6 years ago in a hospital in a European city. On the back, a note in French: "Dr. Michael Evans, pediatric neurological trauma specialist, Sarah's treatment." John let the photo fall, his hands trembling. Michael wasn't just a skilled driver who had appeared by chance in his life. He had known Sarah. He had treated his wife, and now, years later, had mysteriously appeared to work in his home just when Lily needed help the most. Every humiliation, John had inflicted on Michael every harsh word, every look of contempt, now took on a completely different weight. The man he had so cruelly fired was not an opportunist trying to take advantage of a vulnerable child. He was possibly the only person in the world who truly knew how to help Lily, and John had just sent him away. The next morning, John couldn't concentrate on any of his meetings. The photo of Sarah with Michael pounded in his mind like an unanswered question. How was it possible? That fate had brought his wife's doctor to work as a driver in his home just when Lily needed him most. It couldn't be a coincidence. John cancelled all his appointments and instructed Ben to hire a private investigation agency immediately. I want everything on Michael Evans, every document, every job, every step he's taken in the last 15 years. Sir, may I ask about this urgency? Ben asked, nervously adjusting his glasses. I discovered that our former driver is not who we thought he was, John replied, still holding the photo, and I need to know exactly who I was dealing with. Meanwhile, Lily had worsened. She refused to eat, didn't talk to anyone, and had developed a slight fever that doctors couldn't explain. The physical therapist reported that the girl had simply closed her eyes during the entire session, as if she had simply given up. It's as if she's lost the will to live, murmured Dr. Thompson, the family pediatrician, after examining Lily. Sometimes, children who have experienced trauma develop very specific emotional attachments, and when those connections are abruptly severed. Are you suggesting that my daughter is sick because I fired a driver? John interrupted, his voice filled with disbelief and irritation. I'm suggesting that you may have underestimated the importance of this person in her recovery, Dr. Thompson responded calmly. That afternoon, the agency's report arrived via encrypted email. John locked himself in his office and began to read, his certainties crumbling page by page. Michael Evans had graduated from a renowned university, specialized in pediatric neurology in Europe, and for 6 years had worked at a major hospital in a European capital, the same hospital where Sarah had been treated during a research period. But there was more, much more. Michael had lost his own daughter in a car accident 3 years ago. Luna, aged 5, had died in similar circumstances to those that left Lily paralyzed. After the tragedy, Michael abandoned traditional medicine and began to develop unconventional therapy techniques through music and movement for traumatized children. The report included scientific articles published by Michael, citations in international medical journals, and something that made John's blood run cold, an interview he had given to a European newspaper 2 years earlier, in which Michael mentioned his intention to find other children like Luna and offer them a second chance to smile. John picked up the phone and dialed Michael's number. The phone rang several times before a calm voice answered. I know you found out who I am, Michael said without even waiting for a greeting. Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? John asked, his voice betraying a mixture of anger and confusion. Because men like you don't hire former doctors to drive cars, Michael replied. You hire drivers, and Lily needed someone who could be around without raising suspicions or expectations. Suspicions? What kind of game are you playing with my family? Michael sighed deeply on the other end of the line. Mr. John, your wife Sarah, came to me 6 months before the accident. She was researching alternative treatments for childhood paralysis. Why? John asked, bewildered. Because doctors had already diagnosed a problem during her pregnancy that could affect Lily in the future. John felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. That's impossible. Lily was born perfectly healthy. She was born, but Sarah knew there was a genetic risk. She was preparing a preventative treatment plan in case something happened. Michael's voice softened. She asked me to promise that if Lily ever needed it, I would do everything in my power to help her. Michael's words echoed in the silent office like a confession that rewrote the entire history John thought he knew. Sarah had kept a medical secret from him. She had prepared for a tragedy that had not yet happened. "You're lying," John murmured, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's in her will, Mr. John, in the part your lawyers probably classified as the delusions of a worried pregnant woman. Sarah left specific instructions on how Lily should be treated in case of paralysis." John quickly opened the digital files of Sarah's will on his computer. There, on page 17, a section he had completely ignored. "In case of neurological trauma or paralysis involving our daughter Lily, I recommend contacting Dr. Michael Evans, a specialist in unconventional therapy. His methods may seem unorthodox, but they work where traditional medicine fails." "My God," John whispered, letting the phone drop. Ben appeared at the door at that moment, carrying a folder of documents. "Sir, there's something you need to see. I found records of payments your wife made to a clinic in a European city. Monthly payments that continued to be automatically debited from a joint account until last month." John took the documents with trembling hands. Sarah had been paying for a children's rehabilitation clinic all these years, a clinic where Michael worked as a consultant. "He was watching us," John murmured. "Waiting." "Not watching, sir," Ben gently corrected. "Waiting to be needed." In that moment, John realized the extent of his arrogance. He had humiliatingly fired the only man in the world his wife had specifically chosen to care for Lily. He had treated the doctor as an opportunist, a man who had abandoned a brilliant career to fulfill a promise made to a woman who was no longer there. Worse, he had done it in front of Lily, destroying the only genuine connection the girl had formed since the accident. John called Michael again. "I need you to come back." "That's not how it works," Michael replied calmly. "I'm not an employee you can fire and rehire at your convenience. I'm a doctor who made a promise." "So, what do you want from me?" John asked, desperate. "I want you to stop trying to control your daughter's healing and start participating in it," Michael said. "I want you to admit that you don't know what's best for Lily, and I want you to apologize, not to me, but to her." John swallowed his pride like a bitter medicine. "And if I do that," John asked quietly, "then perhaps Lily still has a chance at happiness." As John processed the magnitude of his mistakes, a notification appeared on his phone. A text message from an unknown number. "Lily asked me to send you this." It was a 3-minute video. In the video, Lily appeared sitting in her wheelchair in what looked like a medical office, smiling as she moved her arms in sync with soft music. Her legs, though still, swayed slightly to the rhythm. Michael appeared briefly in the corner of the screen, guiding her movements with infinite patience. The message accompanying the video was devastating in its simplicity. "She recorded this last week when she still believed you loved her more than your own pride." John realized in that moment that he had lost much. More than an employee, he had lost his own daughter's trust. And now, for the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he could recover what he had destroyed with his arrogance and prejudice. But as he watched the video for the 5th time in a row, a new determination began to grow in his chest. Not the determination to control, but the humility to learn. And perhaps, just perhaps, it wasn't too late to become the father Lily deserved to have. Across town, Michael hung up the phone and looked at the framed photo on his desk. Luna, his daughter, smiling in a rocking chair shortly before the accident. "One more, my little one," he whispered. "We're going to save one more." John drove to Michael's apartment without warning. The investigation report folded in his trembling hand. He found Michael sitting on the balcony reading a book, as if he had been waiting for that visit. "You planned all this," John said directly, climbing the steps to the small apartment. "From the first day." Michael calmly closed the book and gestured to the chair beside him. "Sit down, Mr. John. It's time for us to talk as two men who love the same child." "No!" John exploded. "You lied about who you were. You manipulated my family. You used my wife's memory to fulfill a promise you made to her." Michael interrupted him, his voice firm. "A promise you never knew she asked me to make." John threw the report on the table between them. I know everything about Luna, your daughter, about how you abandoned medicine after she died, about how you've been using other children to try and compensate for your own loss." Michael's face twitched slightly, but he didn't deny it. "You're right about one thing," he said. "Every child I help brings Luna back for a few moments, but if you think that diminishes my love for Lily, you are very wrong." "How dare you?" John began, but Michael interrupted him again. "Your wife came to me because she knew you would never accept unconventional methods. Sarah knew your need to control everything, to have scientific answers for emotional problems. She asked me to promise that if something happened to Lily, I would find a way to be there, even if it meant lying about who I really was." Michael picked up a yellowed letter from the table. "Sarah wrote this to you, but she asked me to deliver it only when the time was right." John immediately recognized his wife's handwriting. With trembling hands, he opened the letter and read aloud. "John, if Michael is giving you this letter, it means our daughter needs him and you are fighting against it. Stop trying to fix Lily and start loving her for who she is. Let Michael help her. He lost his own daughter, but he can save ours." Tears began to roll down John's face. "Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" "Because you weren't ready to hear," Michael replied. "You needed to see Lily smile again first, to understand that not everything can be controlled or bought." At that moment, John's phone rang. It was Nurse Clara, and her voice was filled with panic. "Mr. John, you need to come home immediately. Lily, she got out of bed. She's trying to walk by herself and refuses to stop until Michael comes back." John felt his world crumble for the second time that month. "I'm going home," he told Michael. "You're coming with me." "Not as your employee," Michael responded firmly. "As your daughter's doctor, as the man your wife chose to care for her, and as someone who will no longer accept being treated as inferior for trying to save your family." On the way back, John finally asked the question that had been pounding in his head. "What do you really want from me?" "I want you to stop seeing my skin color before you see my competence," Michael said. "I want you to stop thinking that because I'm from a certain background and was driving your car, I can't be qualified to care for your daughter. And I want you to admit that you spent 6 months paying the best specialists in the world, but you fired the only one who actually worked because he didn't look like what you expected a doctor to look like." Michael's words hit him deeper than any investigation report. John realized he had judged Michael not just as an employee, but had carried all the prejudices he didn't even know he had. When they arrived at the mansion, they found Lily in the hallway, leaning on her wheelchair, but with her feet on the ground, trying to take small steps. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't. "Stop! Lily!" John ran towards her, but she held up her hand. "No, Dad, I have to show Michael I did it. I have to show him I didn't give up." Michael approached slowly and knelt down to the girl's height. "I always knew you could do it, little butterfly, but you don't have to hurt yourself to prove it to me." "Are you coming back?" Lily asked, her voice small and full of hope. Michael looked at John, who finally understood that this wasn't about hiring an employee. It was about accepting help, about swallowing his pride, about admitting that he had judged an extraordinary man by his most superficial characteristics. "Michael," John said, his voice choked, "I don't know how to apologize for what I did. I don't know how to make up for my prejudice, my arrogance, but if there's still a chance, I would like you to come back, not as a driver, but as the doctor my wife chose, as the person who made my daughter smile again." Michael smiled for the first time since he had been fired. "Only if you promise me one thing. Next time I teach Lily to dance, you'll dance with her too, because she needs her dad, not just her doctor." And there in the hallway of that mansion, which for so long had been cold and silent, began the most beautiful of creations. That of a family learning that love knows no prejudice and that sometimes the most powerful remedy is simply accepting help from those who are willing to offer it, regardless of their appearance or origin. 2 years later, John's mansion had been completely transformed. The Different Butterflies Project served dozens of children with disabilities, created through a partnership between John and Dr. Michael. Lily, now 10, walked with crutches and danced regularly. Her laughter echoed through the halls of the house that had become a center of hope. "Dad, today we're going to teach the new girl to dance," Lily announced as she entered the office. "She's scared, but I'm going to show her that dancing in a chair is beautiful too." John smiled, remembering when he thought it was impossible for someone in a wheelchair to dance. Michael had become much more than a doctor. He was the brother John never knew he needed. During meetings with investors, John made a point of telling the truth. "I almost destroyed my daughter's only chance at happiness because I judged an extraordinary doctor by the color of his skin. My prejudice almost cost Lily's happiness." The graduation ceremony for the first class took place in the main hall. 23 children had completed the program. Lily went on stage with her crutches and danced a routine she had choreographed herself. "2 years ago, I thought I would never be happy again," she told the microphone. "Today, I know that being different doesn't mean being less special. It means you fly in your own unique way." Michael watched, moved, remembering his first words to Lily. "Some butterflies fly differently, but they still fly." John had lost friends from his elite circle who didn't accept his partnership with a black man, but he gained a real family and a purpose in life. "I learned that prejudice is not just an injustice against others, it's a prison we build for ourselves," he said in a national interview. "When I finally saw Michael for who he really was, I not only saved my daughter, but I saved myself." The project served 300 families a year. Michael published his methodology for free for doctors worldwide. John discovered that building lives was more rewarding than building fortunes. The mansion, which had been a silent tomb, now pulsed with music and hope. John proved that the best revenge against prejudice is to transform it into bridges for a better world. If this story has shown you how our judgments can blind us to miracles right in front of us, keep following for more stories that prove human greatness has no color or social class.